right, welcome everyone who's joined for the Bible study tonight. Please let me know as soon as you get the chance if there's any issues with the audio, as we are still getting used to having a microphone and all that stuff. I was trying to make things a little bit better. But greetings, I see, at least I know Mike and Stefania here. They left comments. So greetings to you. I assume Rebecca's there as well. Uh, we'll go ahead and jump into things. I don't want to waste a lot of time getting into the lesson. Still got a lot of work I'm trying to get done today. Probably record even another video tonight if I can help it for Saturday. So a lot to do. And I've been on the phone for a while trying to get things planned with the conference. So let me put a little note on that to make sure everybody's setting aside time and preparing to be with us and enjoy the conference and everything coming up here in June. So with that in mind, we're going to be looking at the need for discretion tonight. So discretion and prudence are two of my favorite things to talk about in this series. And so prudence is coming up soon. Discretion, though, is today. I originally had thought about doing this the same way we've done some of these others, like where we talk about subtlety and brutishness at the same time. However, I just realized when it comes to the way we talk and being careful with our words and being slow to speak and so forth, that the Bible says so much about that it certainly wouldn't be a waste to spend more time there. So I'm going to try, even though some of these verses will have to be touched on next week as well, if I do it this way, I'm going to try to keep this message more focused on discretion. And that way we can spend a little more time talking about our language next week, which of course is going to go hand in hand with our Sunday morning message about how we show Christ in our homes through our language. So it's all going to be connected in a very important way. However, I want to, like I say, just slow down and spend time on it instead of rushing through it. With brutishness and subtlety, it's easy to put those two together because really, if you don't have that contrast, there's not much to be said. Sounding intelligent versus not sounding intelligent. It's not a lot to be said without that. But when it comes to discretion versus someone who's just very hasty in their speech, there's quite a bit to be said about that in the Bible. So with that, we're going to talk about discretion tonight. That'll set us up, and then next week we can see what's left to talk about as we get into the rest of it. All right, so our text verse is Proverbs 1, verse number 4. It says, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. So, of course, this is part of the mission statement of what the book of Proverbs is about. The idea is, this list of what's going on in those first several verses this is why this book is written. This is what the intention is, the goal of the book. And so in this list, part of that goal is to give subtlety to the simple and to the young man knowledge and discretion. So we know from our chart that most all of that flows from knowledge, that the young man and the simple one, of course, the young man is the one who hasn't experienced stuff and the simple one's the one who hasn't been educated. So there's your two ways in which you increase in knowledge, education and experience. So the person he's talking about in that verse is someone who lacks knowledge. Either because they're young and haven't experienced a lot or because they are simple and uneducated. So the idea is that, one of the reasons this book has been written is to help equip those people who lack knowledge for whichever reason that you might lack knowledge. And so then he gives you the products that come from that. He talks about knowledge and then what comes from it. So that's actually one of the key verses that informed our chart. So let me see if I can bring that up. When you look at our chart, one of the key things that informed this chart is the fact that he tells you within that verse that the product of an education or experience is going to be, first of all, knowledge, and then with that, subtlety and discretion. And subtlety, like we saw last time, doesn't say as much about it. It's a little bit harder to talk about just because the majority of what's said about it in the Bible is in the negative. However, discretion, on the other hand, has more. And there's a couple verses that just really, really drive home what it's all about when it comes to discretion. So with discretion, it's a little bit easier. But also with discretion, you begin to see that there is a connection that is not just born through knowledge. That wisdom, understanding, these kind of things are very much connected to it in a way that it has to have a connection over to wisdom. And so now we're in a special part of our chart as well we should probably talk about, and that's the fact that we're in that band that goes around those outer things: discretion, prudence, low self-esteem, hasty in words, hasty in actions, wise in your own conceit. So we're in that outer band now. We're in the farthest reaches of this. This is where That center band is wisdom, understanding, simplicity, foolishness, scornfulness, and knowledge. As you take that inner band, those are the things that directly are produced either from the heart or the mind based on your connection to the fear of the Lord and your education, so forth. Then that next step of things, the points that come out from that, the sound wisdom, humility, brutishness, frowardness, proud and haughty spirit, or subtlety, those are the direct products of what comes as wisdom grows, as knowledge increases, as understanding grows, or in the opposite, proud, scornfulness, or foolishness, or simplicity. Um, those are those direct products that come from that. So knowing that what you have then is this outer band are the things that are essentially the combinations. So as knowledge and wisdom begin to grow together, as you increase in knowledge here and in wisdom here, it's going to produce discretion. Whereas when you increase in wisdom and understanding here, it's going to produce prudence. As someone is simple, they lack education, and they have foolishness growing in their heart, then they're going to be hasty in their words. As someone is scornful, they feel like they know everything, but they're foolish, in their heart. The two things going together there, which you see creates pride and so forth. They're going to be hasty in their actions. So you see that's how that's produced. And so we'll get to the green and the red parts last, because that's the part that really is last in all of this. But as you see how that outer band works, these elonged triangles that make up that outer band are the combination of things. So in this case, discretion being, which is the one we're talking about tonight, the combination of knowledge and wisdom. And that becomes very clear, like saying your first verse, that knowledge has a part in it. Wisdom, it's more so a matter of that you begin to realize a lot of the things that are said about discretion are things that are said about wisdom, that these are characteristics of wisdom. And now they're just having a little extra notes put to it here and there. All right, so we'll take down the chart and get into our study of this a little bit deeper. Appreciate those who are coming in to be part of the study as well, as I see more people are coming into it. And so as we consider what is discretion, like I said, on a basic level, discretion is the combination of wisdom and knowledge, but that doesn't tell you what it is or what it does. So when I ask the question, what is discretion? The goal would be to answer that. What is it? What does it do? I said there's one verse in particular that really defines that. That is Proverbs 19 and verse 11. Proverbs 19 and verse 11 says, "The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression." So that's the key verse to understand what discretion is here. So let's consider our building blocks. Knowledge is what you know. Subtlety is, let's say, keeping it simple, it's speaking with intelligence. It's, speaking in a way that's your words are crafted well and they're intelligent. And then, of course, wisdom is that justice, judgment, equity, is that ability to take what you know, that knowledge, and use it. And so discretion is mostly, we're going to see it's mostly going to affect the way we speak. Prudence is going to do more with our actions and the directions we take. Discretion is going to be more with with our demeanor and our speech. It's not limited to speech. Your demeanor is also part of it. It's going to mostly come down to those things that we communicate, though. So just, prudence is more about our own personal life and our choices about how they affect us. Discretion is more about how our decisions affect other people. So it's going to be being careful. Like, if I can put it like this, discretion is when you're mad, not necessarily letting your face show it or your words show it. And that's why this verse is so good. Because if we consider what this verse is saying for us, it says, "The discretion of a man deferreth his anger." So, when we have discretion, that discretion causes us to, let's say, essentially hide our anger. It causes us to not show it, to set it aside so that people don't see it. So to be honest, what that teaches us is when somebody lacks that ability, if they're mad, they have to presently yell and scream and let everybody know. It shows a lack of wisdom and a lack of knowledge. If somebody, every time they're mad, they don't even try to hide it on their face, it shows a lack of wisdom and a lack of knowledge. So I understand it's easier for some people than others. Some people have smiley, happy faces. Some people are like me that just to have a normal face is exercise. And so everybody's different, but there is a principle there that applies to everyone. And that's that when we have enough knowledge and enough wisdom to produce discretion, it's going to cause us to be a little more careful about what we communicate, whether that's what we communicate because how our face looks, whether that's what we communicate by our words, whether we communicate it by our actions. We're going to be careful. We're going to realize that it does matter what information we're putting out there to people. In fact, that attitude that I don't care what people think, that attitude that, well, if they don't like it, they can get over it. None of that is scriptural attitude. None of that is proper. None of that's wisdom. It is something that you see somebody say it when they're immature. You'll see a lot of teenagers say, well, I don't care what anybody thinks. But if you're a grown man and you're still saying, I don't care what anybody thinks, then it shows that you have not grown in wisdom in that time that you have grown in age. And that's something that is dangerous. And that's why the book of Proverbs is written to produce discretion, is because you should care what people think about what you say. Because what you say reflects more than just you. I mean, if you're claiming the name of Christ, it reflects Christ, and it's his reputation you're affecting. If you're claiming, to be a part of a company or something. The other day, Jonas was talking about his company shirts, and I won't get into the details of why, but he was talking about his company shirts and being careful with them because his name's attached to them and his company name's attached to him for the place where he works. And he's right. Discretion is that you don't want that something to be done that's going to reflect badly on that. Probably a better example that I can use is the one I've used as to why I don't print a lot of stuff to stick on cars and things. Because people ask me, why don't I print bumper stickers, or why don't I make magnets you can put on your cars? And there's a couple reasons. One, why I didn't put it on my car before is because living in the city, I already had people breaking my window without a big target painted on the side of my car. But now that I'm out of the city, I'm still a little bit reluctant because being in Belgium has made me more aggressive a driver than I would like to be. That's why I said when I was in America for a week, it was hard. It felt like we were moving at a snail's pace, that we weren't going anywhere. Because nobody was in a hurry, nobody was pushing to get places. Whereas here, people run over their grandma just to get one car further in the line. And so it's very different. And I know that what I communicate when I'm driving, either by my demeanor, by the way I drive, is not necessarily the best reflection of Christ nor Again Baptist Church. And so that's why I'm discreet about that. I'm not as quick to throw the name of the church on it and say, yeah, it doesn't matter what they think, because I don't want them to associate the bad with the church. And so that may not be the best example, but that is what this verse is talking about. That when a man has discretion, he's going to put his anger and things aside. He's going to realize that this is not the right time to communicate that, or this is not the right thing to communicate. And so discretion is a lot of times about time and message. It's about, is it the right time to communicate this? Or is this the right thing to be saying? And so the two places where you're going to see that is in terms of is this the right message? Is that the Bible teaches it very much that a foolish person has to express his mind presently. Like he has to pour it out right now. If he's upset, he can't hold it back. I've got to let somebody know that I'm upset. That's foolishness and childishness. Now, that probably afflicts half of the people who will ever hear this message, because the majority of people struggle with that. I know I myself, when I get mad, have a hard time with that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change it. Just because we don't like to hear that, just because it's offensive to hear that, doesn't change that is the truth. It is a mark of foolishness and immaturity, a lack of discretion, when we have to express our emotions presently. I'm sad. Everybody needs to know I'm sad. I'm mad. Everybody needs to know I'm mad. So one of the places I say it'll affect is in what we communicate. We're going to step back and realize that not everybody needs to know that I'm mad. If you think about it, this is one of the characteristics of wisdom. Wise man holds it until afterward, but the fool speaks his mind presently. So one of the characteristics of wisdom is that. Now, where knowledge comes in is that the more you know that this is not the right time to say that. This is not the right thing to be said. The more you know how to say this a little better. This is something I can say that God's helped me with a lot. Is growing up, I spoke very roughly. I used a lot of vulgar words and things of that nature. And so one of the first things God dealt with me about in my salvation was, now that I was saved, I was Christian and so forth, I should live for God. One of the first things he cleaned up was my language. That I used a lot of foul language, and I just realized that this is unbecoming of a Christian. This does not reflect Christ and what he's done in my heart. So God began to deal with that. But it wasn't limited to just me getting rid of the curse words. It continued. It radiated more. to where I began to be a little more careful. I try to my natural, like people think I'm sharp and cutting now with stuff. I have to go back and apologize all the time because the things I say are sharp or biting. uh, if you think I'm biting now, you couldn't survive 5 minutes with me when I was an arrogant, good for nothing teenager. I would have, you would have killed me or something because you couldn't have put up with me. Because I know, like I could look back at things I said and the way I behaved when I was, in my late teens, and I can't believe I talked like that because I didn't have the filter that I should have. And that's really what discretion is. It's a filter. Teaches you, well, instead of saying this, maybe you should say that. So, and this is a process you grow in. I mean, one of the things that I've come to realization about more recently, and it's helped me, and I've tried to teach this to other people. In fact, both of the weddings we've done recently, this was part of my advice and counseling with the people getting married. Was learn to express your things you don't like, not as you always do this, but as when you do this, it has this effect on me. So instead of going to my wife and telling her, "Oh, you always do this, you always say that, you always act like that," I'm trying. Don't always do good at it, but I'm trying to change the way I say that to say, well, Lori, when you do this, it upsets me. When you do this, it makes me feel this way, because this is just a practical example of discretion. When you tell somebody you always do this, what that does is it makes them feel like they have to defend themselves because they don't always do that. They do it more often than you would like, but they don't do that literally everything they say, so they don't always do that. So it puts somebody on the defensive. They feel like they have to protect themselves because now you've attacked them. Whereas if you tell somebody, when you do this, it has this effect on me. When you do this, it upsets me. It hurts my feelings, or so forth. It makes me feel dumb, whatever. Well, then that person actually has to sit back, and instead of responding to an attack, they have to respond to, well, do I care how you feel? Do I care how that affects you? And normal, decent people do. So it's going to actually produce normally the thing you want produced. So I guess my point in that is it's just a practical example of how discretion will help you shape your words and change what you're saying so that there's a filter there where, instead of just open my mouth and pour out whatever foolishness or anger or bitterness or whatever wants to come out, it helps me to stop and, choose my words a little more carefully, or even hold my peace. I mean, the Bible says, and we'll read this passage later, but the Bible says even the fool is counted wise when he holdeth his peace. So, there's something to be said for not saying anything at all. And discretion will help you with that. Discretion will help you to step back and take consideration. If I've got an angry face right now, I may not want to consider the repercussions of that angry face, but I may lose a friend because what I'm communicating is far more severe to them than I realize it is. So, I mean, especially like as a pastor, I have to take account of that in a normal job, if you just look a little bit grumpy, people leave you alone. But as a pastor, if I look a little bit grumpy about something, then people get mad and leave the church because can you believe that pastor got mad about something? And especially in my case, because and that's why I'm always careful to make sure I tell people this so they know this about me, is that the natural shape of my face will look grumpy to you. If I just look like I normally look, I look grumpy like I'm right now. I'm trying to look nice and friendly. I want to be presentable for what I'm trying to do here. And I still looking at my own face on the screen. I feel like I look like a angry person who, wants to yell at somebody. And that's with effort. So if this is what I look like when I'm trying, just imagine what I look like when I don't. So my point is that I have to take consideration that there's not always times I don't always feel like smiling. I don't always feel like, uh, you know, taking time to answer politely and nicely, but I still have to try. And so that's why most people who know me, people who come to church, know I'll come back and apologize when I realize, oh, yeah, I was actually a little bit sharp or a little bit fast with that. And you have to understand that my tone is naturally sharper. It's naturally, quick to just give you a sharp answer and move on. My face is naturally, that way. And so for me, I try to do better, but without discretion, just like I say, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't even try. I would just be sharp and mean and all that stuff. And everybody have a right to be upset, but discretion helps protect me from that. So in terms of why we need discretion, it's because it's the filter you need. It's what keeps you from being, and I apologize to people in Europe that this word apparently to most people in Europe is almost like a curse word, but you have to understand where I'm from, it's not. This is something a child would say, that to keep everybody from thinking you're a jerk, that you're just a hateful and rude person if you don't want to use that particular word. That, if you want to keep people from thinking that about you and ruining your testimony, your message, and your friendships and your relationships, then you need discretion. So again, first place it helps you is in what you say. The other thing is in and how. I would say what and how you say, and then the other is when. So you can just really say it's three different things if you want to break it down to what, when, and how. But and I would say when and where are going to come together. When and where, what and how I put together. But in this particular case, when you say something or where you say it is also going to be affected by discretion, and that's easy for me to point out. There are things that you would not say at a funeral that you would say at a wedding. There's things you wouldn't say at a wedding that you would say at a funeral. Hopefully, you don't get up as a pastor and say, "I'm glad to have you here at the funeral of so and so today at their wedding." Otherwise, you're going to never live that down, because it matters what you say, but it also matters when you say it. It's proper to say to welcome people to a funeral at a funeral. It's not proper to do it at a wedding. So it does matter where you say things, the timing and the place. And so that's another thing people have to understand. And the example I always use for this is because, to be honest, it's because I'm trying to teach people this, because I don't. This is something I don't like, and this is one of those places where I do struggle a little bit with, making sure I don't get a little grumpy. Is just coming to a pastor just before service starts. You have to understand, as a pastor, I have prepared sometimes weeks or more. I've been preparing for this moment, this service, this message. I mean, especially in my case, preparing. Sometimes I've been thinking about this message for 2 years sometimes, because again, that's how far out I start scheduling stuff. And so for me, as I'm coming into that message, I'm excited. I really want to bring this. And then someone who can't wait to talk about something will come to me, and they'll throw out all their bad stuff that's happened this week. Or they'll come to me and they'll complain because somebody made them mad at the church. Or they'll come to me and they'll pour whatever. And it's like, you just took, hours of prayer, hours of Bible study, and you just stomped all over it, to where now I, as a pastor, have to overcome that before I can get back on track to bring a message. So that's why I say that when it comes to discretion, it does matter when you say something. Because as a pastor, if you have a problem, if you need to talk to me about what week you've had, yeah, that's part of our relationship. You should talk to me about that. Just not 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or even 30 minutes before the service is going to start. Catch me not even the moment I'm stepping out of the pulpit. I go and stand in the front at our church so that, there's time. Come out and talk to me while I'm out there shaking hands. If it's something you need to not talk about in front of other people, pull me aside or make an appointment or whatever. But that's my point is, we have to talk about not just what we say and how we say it, but when and where we say it. So, there's some things that shouldn't be said in front of other people. I'll pick on Sophania because I know he's watching. If you think Sophania's an annoying person, unless you're trying to rebuke him, you probably shouldn't say that in front of him. If you need me to talk to Sophania or deal with something, get me aside and say, preacher, maybe you should know that there's this problem. Sophania's acting this way. There's a right way to do it, a right time to do it, a right place to do it. And that's what we have to take consideration about our words and what we're communicating. Same thing. Just because you're mad doesn't mean you have to have an angry face all day. You can try to smile and try to put on a good face and enjoy. That way you don't kill everybody else's enjoyment. I mean, I've had to learn that. I've got a family. And one of the things most men really, really need to learn, and most women too, we're very similar in this, just we come at it from slightly different angles, is that we have a bad habit. When we're mad or we're upset about something, that we don't consider how our demeanor and how our behavior is going to affect everybody else. And so we take and we put on the sad face or the angry face. We don't even try to put on a smile, and we ruin everybody else's day. And I know, like I say, I know I'm guilty of that sometimes. So in terms of just like a quick, or not a quick, I mean, 25 minutes into this thing, but like an overall explanation as to what discretion is, that's what discretion is. It's the filter that helps you better choose when, where, what, and how you communicate things. Even why. I mean, all those W question, or all those questions you can put in there. Discretion is the filter that helps you better choose what you communicate, is the simple answer. So as we talk about the need for it, let me run you through a few verses, help show it a little bit more. And then, like I say, we'll save as much as we can for next week as we talk about people being hasty in their words and where that actually even becomes sin to be hasty and careless with your words. Because as we do talk about the need of discretion, that is something that needs to be said, is that a lack of discretion is often a cause of sin. So you very much need it because without it, there are many things that you'll do that God says are sin. So Psalm 112, verse 5, a good man showeth favor and lendeth, he will guide his affairs with discretion. So you see that it is about what we communicate and how we treat other people. Because he's speaking here, he says, a good man is going to guide his affairs. He's going to choose what he does with discretion. So he's going to choose to help some people who are in need. That's where the lending comes in. He's going to choose to help some people in need with discretion. He's not necessarily going to lend to everybody. I'll just be honest. There's some people I've lend money to. There's some people I've just given it to because I didn't want to have the problem of worrying about whether it was going to come back or not. And there are some people that I cannot morally give money to because I know that it would bother me if they didn't pay it back, and I don't trust them to pay it back. And God says, if I can't give it with the right heart, trusting that that person's not, not worrying about whether that person's going to pay it back, then don't do it. And I've given that example. I won't say who it is, but it's one of my relatively close family members that I don't like the way that he has borrowed money. I'll say that much. I'm not being very discreet, but as I've said it publicly before, so I don't feel like I need to tonight. But he has, and just so nobody feels offended, if you think it's you, it may not be. It's the one that everybody knows because everybody's lending money to him at some point. But anyways, he has borrowed money from everybody, and he never pays it back, and he's always a problem with that. And so because of it, I know my heart that most anybody in my family, my side or my wife's side, I can give money. Some I could give more, some I could give less. Some I could borrow to because I trust them to pay it back. But for the most part, this one person, I'm not willing. I even encourage other people not to give him because he just doesn't pay people. And so because of that, our relationship is that I know I can't do that, and so that affects my discretion. That there are some people I can help, some people I can't, and so forth. That's affected by my discretion. I mean to say. But then even taking that same idea, he says it affects how we show favor to people. So going back to the idea of giving money, there are some people who I would be more quickly to give or help. Some people I enjoy being around more and so forth. And so my favor towards somebody is also affected by my discretion, my affairs. What I do is governed by that discretion. That it's that filter that chooses how I relate to people and what I communicate to them, how I help them, so forth, all that kind of thing. It's about my relationship to other people, which we've already established that. Then, uh, what's my next verse? Proverbs 5, verse 1 through verse 3 says, my son, attend unto my wisdom and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman doth drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. So you have this teaching here that it's also not about just how we connect with people and like what we do towards them and for them and so forth. But it's also a matter of what we communicate, which is what we've been saying up till now. He's contrasting the lips of someone who has discretion versus the strange woman. That the strange woman is subtle. I mean, she's very tricky in what she says. She's very crafty in the way she puts her words together. But the discretion of actually being careful, not to hurt somebody, not to damage someone with their words, they're not there. She's intentionally trying to trap people and kill them with her words. Whereas when I have discretion, I'm going to look over some things. I'm not always going to feel like I have to punish you for everything you've done wrong. I'm not going to try to hurt you with my words. I'm going to try to be careful and make sure my words are not destructive to you. And so there's something to understand about discretion. Then Proverbs, and we'll come to this next week, so I'll just mention it. Proverbs 10, 18, and 19. It's where I say it becomes a matter of sin when we don't have discretion. Is in that passage, it tells us that in the multitude of words their sin wanteth not, meaning when we talk a lot and there's no filter to it, that there is not going to be a lack of sin. Sin will be present when we're talking without a filter. And that's why you have verses like, which we'll talk about next week, James 1:19, where we're told for everyone to be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. That God has that expectation of us, that we would slow down about speaking and be much more careful to listen and take in information. Then Proverbs 17, verse 27 and verse 28. And I think we'll read that one because that's directly about this. Proverbs 17, verse 27 and 28. We've even already mentioned it, actually. It says, He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. So he that hath knowledge spareth his words. So your understanding is going to affect your spirit, but he that hath knowledge is going to be careful with his words. He's not just going to throw things out there. And part of that comes down to, if you know you have to give an account to God for every idle word, if you know your words have the power of life and death within the tongue, if you know your words, have this impact that God says they do, that they affect how people see you, like we talked about on Sunday morning, that they affect how, they have a tremendous effect on the people that hear them, as we've said so far tonight. When you know all of those things, and you know that I have to answer to God for this, then knowledge is going to affect the way that you speak. You're going to step back and be more careful if you have any wisdom at all. Now, if you're foolish, then you're not going to care. You're still just going to blurt out whatever comes in your mind and say whatever you want, regardless of how much knowledge, regardless how much of that information I just gave that you know. You're still just going to blurt all out if you're foolish. But if we have any wisdom at all, then that's going to affect the way that we speak. Knowing those things is going to cause us to take a step back and realize, okay, I can't talk like this. I can't just say something because I'm mad. I need to be careful. Even in this lesson, as I was trying to explain about who I don't lend money to, I'm trying to be very careful in that, so as to not say the exact person by name, but also I don't want to make sure that you don't walk away with the wrong opinion, because I'm not talking about other people, and I don't want you to be a guessing game and hurt the wrong person. You see, that's me trying to use discretion in real time, and trying to decide what information to give and what not, so as to be polite to both sides of that equation. So discretion causes us to look at things in that way. Now, the last side I say in terms of why we need discretion is not just about what it is and what it does, but also some things that God talks about in, for example, Proverbs 3, verse 21. Proverbs 3 and verse 21 says, My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall thy life be, so shall they be life unto thy soul and grace to thy neck. Then shalt thou walk in thy way safely, and thy foot shall not stumble. So sound wisdom, we've already talked about its part in this. You'll notice that some of what he's talking about here would apply very closely to prudence, which is probably why sound wisdom is part of the list, because it helps, prudence is a product on that side of things. But discretion, he's saying it'll make your life better. It'll help you. It'll protect you. It'll help you to be more gracious in what you communicate to people. It'll keep you safe from some of the problems you'll get into when you're not careful about what you say. It'll keep you out of some fights and some arguments if you stop and pause and think about what you're going to say. So it'll protect you from a lot of problems. And then the last verse I want to give is Proverbs 11:22, which is probably the first verse most people thought of when I said discretion. It says, As a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. And the statement to take away from this is that essentially he's saying that even if you have a lot of the other good qualities we could talk about in Proverbs or on this list or so forth, but you don't have discretion, then it's like having a beautiful woman, it's like having a jewel of gold and putting it in a swine's snout. It doesn't matter how beautiful you are or these kind of things if you don't have discretion. Now, the direct comparison here is the beautiful woman. So let me take that and explain that first before I try to make the application, because I jumped the gun a little bit on that. The direct thing here he's talking about is if you have a woman who's beautiful, you see her and she's just absolutely beautiful, but she lacks discretion. Like, she doesn't have that filter. She just says whatever comes to her mind. She just says whatever she wants. She doesn't care about what she says and how it affects people and what she's communicating. That's not just going to be in words. You're going to see that in the way she dresses. So you see a woman who doesn't care about modesty, that means she doesn't have discretion. She doesn't care about what she's showing and how it affects the people that see it. You see a woman who lacks discretion, and so she just gossips and talks and causes problems. A woman who lacks discretion, and so it causes her to say mean and biting things against people. Or a woman who lacks discretion, so every time she gets mad, she's yelling and screaming. Or she lacks discretion, and so she says stuff to cut down her husband or her children or her family. There's so many ways in which this discretion can be seen, or this lack of discretion can be seen. He's saying if you have a woman who doesn't matter how beautiful she lacks discretion, it says like you've taken a pig, you gave it a beautiful gold jewel in its nose. That gold jewel doesn't do anything for that pig. That pig's still just as disgusting as it was before. It's still just as much of a problem. That jewel may look nice if you focus on it, but at the moment you take your eye off of that jewel and notice anything else about that pig, you're going to be turned away. And essentially what he's saying about a woman is you can be as beautiful as you want to if you don't have discretion. If you're not careful in what you're communicating by the way you dress, by the way you act, by the way you talk, by when you do these things and so forth, then he's saying your beauty may distract people for a moment, but the moment they take their eyes off of that, that beauty doesn't matter. It's like looking at a pig with a nose ring. That's what he's saying, which I guess is even more ironic since nose rings have become more and more popular nowadays for women. That's a whole separate note. So anyway, saying that, that's the direct thing. The application, which is where I was jumping the gun a minute ago to get to, is that for each of us, we have to understand that we have a lot of good attributes, but you lack discretion. Because discretion is what you communicate to other people, those things are not going to be enough to make them look past it. They're not going to look past the evil that's there. If you can be as wise as you want, but if you talk to people like trash, you're rude and you're mean and all this kind of, you're callous, you're cutting, then all that wisdom is going to be wasted. You can be full of knowledge, but if you're sharp and cutting with your words, you don't care about how your actions and stuff affect other people, it's all going to be wasted. So as I'm making this closing statement, if you have any questions, be sure to be typing those up now, because the main thing to take away from this last verse we're looking at is that discretion will keep you from a lot of problems, and without it, people are not going to be able to look past the problems that you have. They're not going to be able to look past the bad attitude and the bad spirit. They're not going to be able to look past the sharp cutting words and the meanness. It doesn't matter how wise or whatever you are. It doesn't matter how pretty a woman is. You can't ignore that, the rudeness for so long. It doesn't matter how much you like a person. It doesn't matter what good they bring to the table. If they lack discretion and they're just cutting and rude all the time, eventually it's going to overshadow whatever good is there. And so that's why we have to be very careful when it comes to what we communicate, whether that's through actions, whether it's through dress, whether it's through our words, when and how and where we say them and all that kind of stuff, why we say them, everything. We have to take all that in consideration, and discretion is the filter that helps us do that. So at the end of the day, discretion is just that. It's a filter that helps you govern what you communicate to people, to be careful with what you communicate, with when you say it, why you say it, where you say it, how you say it, and what you say. So that's what discretion is really about. All right, I don't see any questions coming in. Still give a couple minutes. We're closing well within our time today, so I'll give a couple minutes for questions if anybody has any coming in. Hopefully it's a help to people, because discretion is definitely something we need more of. This is, I guess, the fact that it's further out on the rim of things is probably why you see less of it in people. But some of the best Christians I know struggle with this, especially in the age we live in with social media, with Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff. People say things that should never be said publicly, and with a large audience with whom to preach it to. And so now you even see it in the pulpit, preachers using language they should not and doing things they should not, because they don't really care what they're communicating. But we should care what we communicate and how it reflects Christ and how it affects our testimony and reputation as well. Speaking of that, in case anybody missed the memo, I did get my street performer's permit now. So apparently, I'm not just a street preacher anymore. I'm a street performer now. So now I can use my megaphone. In case anybody missed that announcement on Sunday, Nana donated a megaphone to the church because he felt sorry for me seeing me preach, and then having to really push, especially like last Saturday. I really probably should have used it last Saturday, but I didn't want to get in trouble for using it without a permit and then not be able to preach during the conference when I have people here. But yeah, Saturday, if you missed out on that, there was a guy who set up on the opposite side of us who actually took our original spot. That he set up on the opposite side of us, and he was playing his trumpet as loud as he could and had his music there. He had a sound system set up to play music, and he was trying to compete with us. So I had to, without a sound system, preach over top of him. I think I did a good job, but it was I was preaching against the wind a little bit. Uh, Really sunny day that actually has an effect more than you'd realize. The wind's the worst part, but we still, I think, managed to preach over top of him. But Nana brought that for me so that next time you'll see me, I'll have the handpiece and the megaphone holding it out, and I'll be able to preach without any problems. So no, there's no mime classes being offered. I don't. If I was going to do street performing, I'd have to be lazy about it. I had to be that guy who just paints himself silver and sets steel or something. I think I could handle that a little better. As long as I don't start sneezing, I'll be all right. Apparently, you also can get a street performer's permit starting from 3 years old. So I almost got one for Josiah, just so he can go be a panhandler, be out there and dance or something, get people to give him some money. No, I'm joking. I always said I was going to get it for. I think for him and Eddie both, I've made this joke that I was going to get an organ grinder and let them be my monkey that goes out there and collects money while I just turn the handle. That's probably what I need to do. All right. All jokes aside, see several people noted that don't have any questions. I appreciate the good feedback on the study. I appreciate everyone being here. As Nick would say, if you didn't like the video, and be sure to like it. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to do that. I'll speak on his behalf since he didn't make it tonight. And if you made it to the end, make sure you leave an amen in the comments. Like I say, tonight I'm probably still going to record our video for Saturday. Thursday, I've got to record the next Pastors React and the next Bible Challenge. So that one's shaping up to be interesting. It's going to be all new people, all young preachers coming in to do it. I think it'd be an interesting Bible challenge for you. But anyways, appreciate everyone being here to be a part of the study with us. I hope as people come in that they'll get this lesson and get help from it. If it's helpful and you want people to have it, share it and you make it available to people, especially if you have Facebook and stuff, so people can get help from it. All right. Thank you, though. And we look forward to seeing everybody at church tomorrow.